Hello.
Testing, testing. All right. Do you want to pull that over?
Yep. Give me 1 sec.
Doo-doo-doo. Nice.
And
Then,
nice. Cool.
cool. Do you want to? Are you able to full screen that on that side? No.
Fortunately not.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so hello everybody, and welcome to Bypass 102, an introduction to basic bypass remediation. If you guys saw the previous presentation, Bypass 101, that's for the best because, we're going to be going through each of the things that we discussed in that presentation and how to fix them. If you haven't, we'll be going briefly over each exploit a little bit shorter so that you can understand what the remediation is. My name is Karen. I am a physical security pen tester and consultant.
And my name's Terry. I'm one of the village leads for the Physical Security Village.
And we will be your hosts for the next 45 minutes. So, this talk is a follow-up to Bypass 101. If you haven't seen that, if you weren't here earlier when we were giving it, I'd recommend after this presentation going online. There's a few versions of it on YouTube that you can watch that'll also kind of go through everything. And so this talk covers the remediations and retrofits that you can use to secure your facilities from these very basic bypass methods. So, similar to cybersecurity, physical security is a constant game of cat and mouse where people find vulnerabilities and then create remediations for those vulnerabilities, followed by people finding new vulnerabilities to the remediations. Similar to with cybersecurity, we do have a red and a blue team that goes back and forth to try to prevent each other from doing what they're trying to do. So here's our little loop of infinite security. So this is happening at all times pretty much between the physical security teams, just like in cyber. Lock bypass, real quick, is usually about ignoring the locks. So it's all sorts of physical security things outside of lockpicking. And so it involves looking at the door or the building or other mechanisms involved and finding an alternative way to open the door or avoid having to use that door completely. These methods are used in physical hacking and are very simple and can be used by pretty much anyone with a little bit of knowledge. So we're going to get right into it with latch targeted bypass. So you may have heard of carding a door before. This is the more informal way of referring to latch targeted bypass, which targets that latch that holds the door closed when it's supposed to be shut. So usually the best way to prevent people from using this method of bypass is to install your door properly. Your door latches usually come with this security feature. It's called a dead latch. I have it circled here in red. And basically what this does is it prevents the latch from being pushed into the door when the door is supposed to be closed. So here's a real quick demo video showing the dead latch and how it works. This will be familiar to the people that saw 101, but pretty much this latch can be pushed into the door, but only when that dead latch isn't pushed in already. And so if your door is installed properly, this dead latch should be actuated. It should be being pushed into the door by the strike plates, and that basically prevents the rest of that latch from going into the door when it's not supposed to. So again, you want to make sure when you're installing these doors that the dead latch is actually being pushed in when the door is closed and that the strike plate that you have is the correct one for your door, and also that it's installed correctly and that the door fits in the frame and can't be wiggled around in such a way that the latch can be made to fall completely, the dead latch can be made to fall completely into the hole in the strike plate. You might also have seen these kinds of retrofits around for a door that's already installed. You can add something like this, which is called a latch guard that can help prevent people from using this bypass method, but can further to that be bypassed by using other methods. So for example, this kind of latch guard prevents you from being able to use a rigid tool to open the door, but you can use something like piano wire or something else to get behind that latch yet again and open that door, even if you've put this retrofit on. Yep. I have talked about that already. So here's some more examples of those latch guards. And again, they are imperfect and still can be bypassed. And also usually if I'm walking around a facility and I see these kinds of latch guards, it's pretty much an indicator to me that I can use a little bit of piano wire to get that door open, because it means that they can't fix the latch, they can't reinstall things properly, they're just trying to kind of cover it up. So I know that that door is vulnerable to this kind of attack.
Yep, so now I'm going to do a little bit of a talk on how to remediate these handle-targeted bypasses. Out of curiosity, who was here for the first presentation, the Bypass 101? Very cool, sounds good. Just need to figure out how much of the re-explaining of these bypasses I should be doing. So for these handle-targeted bypasses, as I mentioned in the previous presentation, they mimic a person coming in from the secure side to the unsecure side. So you're, from the outside, you're mimicking someone turning the handle and walking outside the door. So one of the easiest remediations is preventing this gap that is needed for the under the door tool to fit under from existing. So you can do that with a couple of different ways. So first of all is, these are would all be retrofits. So first of all is this beveled threshold, which prevents any sort of under the door tool from actually fitting under the underneath the door. There's also a rubber door seal or brush, which while it's still harder, while it's still possible, it's much harder for you to be able to manipulate the under the door tool. Oh, skip something. I think. Oh. Also, as I mentioned before in the last presentation, depending on the type of door handle, some of them are easier to bypass than others. As I mentioned in the last presentation, the Q lever is one of the harder ones to bypass just because the under the door tool is, it's easier for the under the door tool to slip off. You can, Windows can also make, on your door can also make it easier for the bypasser or the perpetrator to get through the door, as, you know, with that little window, you can actually see what you're doing with the under the door tool. So you can either cover it up or remove these windows. And you can add mag locks. So these are electromagnets are used to just provide another layer of security and prevent these under the door tools from working. They can be bypassed, and you know, you can do that. You can learn about more of these bypasses over at the village, though.
Okay, so next I'm going to be talking about deadbolts. Oops. So this is a deadbolt. They are different from dead latches that I talked about earlier, and you'll usually see these with a thumb turn on the other side. And like I mentioned in the previous presentation, these actually prevent you from being able to use latch-targeted bypasses and under the door tools, because that bolt can only be pulled in using the little thumb turn on the other side. You'll also see ones like this, double-sided deadbolts that have a lock that needs a key on either side to open it, so it doesn't have that thumb turn. So obviously it's less convenient because you need to pull out your keys every time you're entering or leaving the space. But it is far more secure and way harder to bypass than other methods. My push bars. Okay, cool. Next, I'm going to be talking about push bars. So this is what I'm talking about when I say push bar, these little flat things that you push in order to exit a space. It's a good idea not to have holes above or below or little gaps in general around this push bar, because then you can feed a string through it and pull that open. And you want to be also using a push bar that uses a dead latch or a latch guard that prevents these latch targeted attacks that you can also use on these types of locking mechanisms. You can also see things like retrofits, kind of like this one, that can be installed around your existing push bar to prevent people from being able to access it. So this one, you can see the big metal panel that just kind of makes it so that people can't kind of stick their fingers in there and push it by hand. But this is still vulnerable to using a little piece of string to get around it. You can also see these kinds of retrofits around sometimes. These just prevent any kind of string or tool from being able to be used to push these inward. But of course, these are still vulnerable to latch targeted attacks. Just as I mentioned earlier, every time that the blue team figures out a new remediation, the red team is figuring out a new vulnerability.
So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how to remediate these hinge removals. So a lot of these remediations are going to be retrofits. Specifically, you're going to take these hinges and replace them with more secure hinges. And there are I believe, two main ones I'm going to be talking about. First of all are the hinges with set screws. So these prevent the hinges from being removed while the door is closed. You can see in the circle over there that there's a little screw that won't be accessible when the hinges are closed, and thus when the they can only be removed when the door is open. So that's the first type. And the second type are these studs, hinges with studs in them. So, you can attempt to try and remove these hinges, but these studs fit perfectly with the studs on one side of the hinge fits into the stud holes in the other side of the hinge, which prevents you from actually being able to lift up the door and remove it. So yeah.
All right, next is button push combination locks. So I talked earlier about with the simplex locks how the default code from the factory when they're being manufactured and sent out to you for the first time is pressing 2 and 4 at the same time and then 3. The easiest way to remediate this is to change your combination. There's also boxes like this that you'll see that have the same thing. You should change your combination. If you suspect that someone unauthorized has figured out the combination to your button push combination lock, you should change your combination.
And now about some enterphones. So as a little bit of a background for enterphones, these are placed in the front of your building so that, if you have a guest coming over, then you can buzz them in. They'll put in a short code and you'll buzz them in. A lot of the bypasses involved with this is either, there are these key-to-like keyholes. Over there you can see one, or there are like master codes that you can push in to add in users, and the way to remediate that is to change your combinations. So you can very easily change the default master code. You can very easily change the key-to-like locks, and change your locks. That means right. So yeah, you can also get these enterphone covers and security bars to prevent enterphones from being opened by force or by key.
Cool. So next, I'm going to be talking about request to exit sensors and how to remediate those kinds of bypasses relating to them. So you'll see these probably around some buildings. You'll see a little green blinky light that flashes on when you walk past it. And these are called request to exit sensors, or REC sensors. And they are set up so that the person inside can leave the building and do so conveniently without having to worry about the door being locked or the alarm going off, things like that. So if it detects someone from the secure side exiting, then it goes, oh, okay, someone is leaving, I can open the door or not set off an alarm, and it's fine. So most of these request for exit sensors rely on what's called passive infrared, or PIR. And pretty much the oversimplified way of thinking about it is that it detects a change in temperature. And so if you can trick that sensor into thinking someone is on the inside exiting the building, then it allows them access when it shouldn't. There used to be this company called Interlogix, rest in peace, that made a request exit sensor that uses both passive infrared but also radar. So it would detect, 1, a change in temperature, but 2, whether or not this mass of temperature was getting closer or further away from the door. And so this actually made it far more difficult to bypass and get around because you would need both that temperature change but also something moving towards the door. They did shut down and stop making those request exit sensors, unfortunately, and there are other companies that still make these dual tech sensors, but they range in like the thousands and tens of thousands of dollars instead of the hundreds like Interlogic's did. But generally, the remediation for this kind of exploit is that these request exit sensors are more convenient but less secure. You're trading in security for convenience. So for secure areas, instead of having these request exit sensors, it's far safer to use a request exit button that's far away enough from the door that it can't be pushed by someone from the unsecure side, or a tap in, tap out system, which of the three is the most secure.
Yeah, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about elevators. So as mentioned before, elevators are everywhere. You can often bypass them through key to like locks. But the easy way to remediate this is to change your locks. So you can switch out most commonly common service key switches for elevators. You can't do this for fire recall key switches. And something of note, this also doesn't prevent jumping or hoistway access. So the best way is to not rely on elevator floor lockouts for security. So make sure to have some additional locked doors past the elevators. You'll often see hospitals do this kind of thing where they have like a lobby and additional locked doors past the elevator.
All right, and then finally, I'm going to be talking about other remediations. So a lot of the times, the best way to prevent something like tailgating, which is the term used to refer to someone following someone else in after they've unlocked the door. So a user with legitimate access getting into a building and then not paying attention to someone behind them, kind of holding that door open or sneaking in behind them or being allowed to come in. You know, a lot of people rely on being polite to take advantage of that. So, you know, if I'm carrying a bunch of heavy boxes or pretending to carry a bunch of heavy boxes to try to infiltrate a space, people are very likely to just use their credential, tap in, and just hold the door open for me. And so the best way to prevent that kind of issue in your security and other methods of social engineering is to promote a proper security culture. If you have employees that see things like tailgating and be like, hey, hold on, you need to tap your credential too, I can't just let you in, or people that aren't afraid to look at someone they don't recognize and say, hey, who are you? You don't work here. If you say that you work here, prove it. And, you know, to just stop people and just ask questions and actually verify people's identities when coming into the building. You know, the reason that social engineering works is it takes advantage of people's politeness and cultural norms of just, you know, I'll be nice, I'll hold open the door for them, even if it's a door that's supposed to be secure. And, you know, part of why we do presentations like this or the village and things like that is because we want to bring security more to people's attention and more to the forefront of people's minds so that they think about it more. And then because they're thinking about security more, they notice things, not just literal physical vulnerabilities, but also vulnerabilities in the security culture. Another remediation that is an important part of kind of the whole picture of security is alarms and sensors. So these can be used in combination with these kinds of retrofits to prevent people from being able to use bypasses without being caught. Obviously, alarms and sensors, as we've mentioned before, can be bypassed and are imperfect. But having some sensors are better than nothing because without sensors, anyone can get in with sufficient force and time. If there's no way to detect that there's an intruder getting in, bypassing these doors, then they can take as long as they need to get into your secure space because you don't know that they're there. Another important remediation and another important part of a complete security plan is cameras. So well-placed cameras with proper lighting can be used to catch bad actors and stop them and intercept them before they're able to cause any damage to your facility. But again, they're imperfect, they can be bypassed, and an important part to keep in mind with these cameras is that it is important where you're placing them and the lighting of the area, because it can actually, prevent you from being able to get any useful information out of these cameras. In addition, cameras can deter ne'er-do-wells and bad people from being able to want to risk trying to do whatever bypasses to get into your space, because they see it and they realize, oh, I might get caught. It also enables response. So once your security guard or your security team sees someone on these cameras, then they know to go to that location to respond and try to stop someone from entering a space they shouldn't be. And it also is good for insurance. It minimizes the risk of insurance claims refusal, because you'll have actual evidence, hey, this random person did this, here's the proof on camera. And finally, I'm just going to talk very briefly about timing analysis. So, all of the things that I kind of talked about with alarms and sensors and cameras and things like that, it's very important to be able to sit there and analyze your entire facility and figure out at what point an intruder is able to be detected, whether by a camera or a sensor, and then making sure that your security is able to get from wherever it is that they happen to be to get to where these intruders are before they're able to get to their next location. And so all of these need to be considered when working to create a good security plan. And even if a bad actor is able to use bypasses or elevators or bad security practices to get into your space, as long as you're able to detect them and intercept them before they're able to get to your critical data or critical information or anything that they're trying to get to, then you have a secure space, even if you have a bypass vulnerability. So that kind of takes me to the end of the presentation. If you guys have questions, we seem to have, I don't know how much time?
20 minutes, about.
Okay, so we have about 20 minutes for Q&A. If you guys, you closed that way too early. Oh, Terry. This takes us into our Q&A. If you guys have questions, you can raise your hands here, and our lovely hot fixer with a microphone can come up and take your questions. Otherwise, if you are shy or you think of questions after the presentation, feel free to...
Out of battery.
Oh, you're out of battery. Great. Feel free to hit us up on any of our social medias that are now no longer on screen. So if you want, you can come by the village, grab one of our business cards, or come talk to Terry or I personally to get our personal contact. And feel free to email us or tweet at us or any of that if you have questions after you get home. So do you have any questions right now? Yes.
Ooh.
Sorry, say that again? Oh, the request to exit sensors. Yes. So this is a question more relevant to the first presentation, but that is okay because we did both of them. So if anyone else has questions about the earlier presentation, you can ask that as well. But pretty much these passive infrared sensors, like I mentioned before, they detect a change in temperature. So what you can actually do with these kinds of sensors is you can take a can of compressed air, like the kind you use to clean your keyboard, and then you can flip it upside down, and that'll make a big cloud of cold air, and then because that sensor detects that temperature change, it will unlock that door for you.
These request to exit sensors are often found at the top of the doors. So what you'll often see is like you'll have to do it at the top of the door frame, and it'll that will be what triggers the request to exit sensor.
Yeah, there's also really fun videos online of people not just using cans of cold compressed air, but I've seen videos of people taking like a shot of whiskey and then going up to the door and just going and making a little cloud of warm air and that activating it. So, you know, all sorts of things, but one technique is probably better for in-person pen tests realistically than the other. But yeah, so all sorts of ways. It just needs to be a significant and large enough temperature change that the sensor goes, oh, a human person. Yeah, so those, oh, do you want to talk?
Well, you're talking about the wheelchair access.
Like the wave to exit ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it depends on specifically the technology, like the brand and the technology, because different ones use different tech. Most of those ones I think are just kind of proximity sensors. So you just kind of wave an object close enough to it. Sometimes I've seen people like attach a little flag to a wire and kind of shove it through and just kind of wave it in front. And sometimes those wave to exits work. But usually part of doing a pen test of this sort involves like walking around, and if you can see through like the door or something what that is, then you can look into it, you get a photo, you research it, and then you come back with that information. And with these pen tests, we're trying to research before we get on site as much as possible about all the various technology it uses and how we can take advantage of it.
Yeah, for something that would be like temperature sensitive, like you could very easily set up one of those hand warmers, those the mini chemical hand warmers.
Oh yeah, and just kind of
put it on do that, or like put it on the
Slide
string and wave it near the sensor. There's all sorts of creative methods to get around.
Yeah, so for a lot of the time when we're doing these pen tests, before we actually set foot inside the building, we'll kind of walk around and see what kind of information we can gather. We'll go on like Google Photos or Google Reviews and see if we can get pictures of the lobby. Any kind of information we're able to kind of dig up that will help us in our actual site visit. We try to find as much of it as possible because, knowledge is power, and we can find out the things that we can take advantage of when we get to that site visit.
Yeah, something that's also very useful is I believe it was this presentation where the some doors like have windows in them, so like you don't even have to go inside. You can just look through the window, take a quick picture, and then research it later.
Yeah, a lot of like newer office buildings, they like that glass look because it feels kind of fancy, but it also means that you can kind of look and be like, okay, there's a sensor here, there's a button there, there's a security camera over there, and get like a good idea of the space. But they like it because it looks nicer. Do we have other questions? Yes. Mike is coming.
Nice.
Mike is coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
Go, Terry. Go. Mike is coming.
I was curious about the time administration. Did you say did you say about take the time where intruder have to take to enter and take information or whatever inside? There is a standard time of reaction inside, or that depends in every occasion, in depending the situation and the institution?
Yeah, so usually we account for like worst case scenarios, right? So, we know it takes about this amount of time to travel down this hallway this distance. Or we know that lockpicking this kind of lock that they have on the door will take this amount of time, bypassing it will take this amount of time, et cetera, et cetera. So, we have like approximate guesses of worst case scenarios of, okay, let's say this person really knows what they're doing. This door is vulnerable to a latch targeted bypass, so it would take them 2 seconds to get past here. It would take them 15 seconds to go down this hallway. So we do have like standard-ish times for worst case scenarios. And then there's also, depending on like if it's, say, for example, a safe lock or something like that, there's international standards that dictate, this kind of safe is, because it has this certification, will take a minimum of this amount of time to get through the door with access to tools. And so we use all of that as numbers that we can then calculate what's the worst case scenario. Let's say the person breaking in has figured out the optimal path. Will your security be able to catch up to them and stop them in time? If, say, your security guard takes 15 minutes to drive on site and 30 seconds to walk across the grounds, and then you can calculate all of that. And then you can see where your security is lacking and where that timing doesn't work out such that you can stop the perpetrator before they get what they want. Any other questions? Yes.
So what kind of companies do you guys pen test? I mean, which sector? Finance?
Yeah, so the question is, and let me know if I have this wrong, what kind of companies provide pen testing?
I mean, I don't know if you guys
Oh, what kind of companies
Perform
do
pen test?
we pen test at? Honestly, all sorts. We do it for pretty much anywhere that has like a physical office. We've done pen tests for warehouses, insurance companies, and things like that. A little bit of stuff in like healthcare kind of system. Really anything with like a physical office that you could walk into the server room of or walk into and pick up files from. It needs to be pen tested generally. Do you have something else?
did you, like, when you present the results to the company, have you seen that they taking actions?
So it depends on the company. You know, a lot of the times the companies that hire us are like the security team for a company trying to prove to the CEO that they need to spend more money on security. And then depending on how much money they have available, they will choose certain things to fix or certain things not to. Within my company that I work for, we'll usually write a very long report that reports all of the security vulnerabilities we found, and then a bunch of recommendations at various price points, depending on how much they want to spend, and then how urgent and how big of a concern it is that they fix it. And then we work with them to figure out within their budget what should be fixed and to make sure that it's fixed properly so they don't run into the same issues again with the same vulnerabilities. Awesome. Any other questions? Oh, we have one over here. Yep, so just right into the mic. It's very...
Hola.
Yes.
This might be a bit of a, I mean, I don't know if I'm digressing with this question, but what's like the worst case scenario that you have found in a pen testing, like a security disaster that you have found? Maybe I'm just asking because I'm
It's a fun story for sure. It's hard to say what is like the worst because, you know, everything that when it comes to kind of security like this, it's fixable. But, you know, if you want to hear a funny story, maybe one time, and I had told this story earlier to someone, but we were doing a pen test. We were in the building after hours, but we were dressed like employees. And so we were walking around, we're going through HR files, we're playing around with the doors, and we set off one of the alarms on one of the doors. And so they had offsite security, so 15 minutes later, this guy drives up, and he gets over to the HR office where we're kind of going through the files, and we see him outside of the door, and we go, oh, and we come over and we open the door for him, and we're like, oh, hi, you know, what's the issue? Can we help you? And the security guard, which was, you know, hired by the company to secure the facility, looks over at us, you know, looks us up and down, sees us in our, you know, work outfits and goes, oh, I'm so sorry. We actually had an alarm go off. Do you know anything about that? And we went, oh, that was us. Sorry. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, we're just here working late and we weren't paying attention. I'm so sorry. And he looks at us and goes, oh, no, it's fine. Just if you could let me know when you'll be done so I'll know when to ignore the following alarms until. And we were like, oh, yeah, we'll be about 2 hours if that's okay. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay. Okay, thank you so much. And we're like, oh, yeah, thank you. Sorry for the trouble. Have a nice night. And he gets in his little car and he drives off. And so, you know, this security guard had caught us in the middle of us, you know, rifling through HR files or rifling through, you know, private personal data that we should not have had access to. And instead of confirming our identities and making sure that we actually were supposed to be there, he went, oh, cool, these people work here, great, and just walked away. So that's probably one of my favorite ones, just because the security guard literally came over and talked to us, and then we were like, okay, bye. So that one's really fun. I had another site visit where I jumped into a dumpster and was kind of digging through their garbage, but it was mostly just like paper garbage. And so I was digging through it, and I found a bunch of customer data that had been thrown out accidentally. And they were like, oh, yeah, no, this normally doesn't happen. But if it was frequent enough that it happened while I was there, that's probably not the first time it's happened. So, yeah. That's also pretty funny. I have like a lot of fun stories, so feel free to come and chat with me afterwards. Do you have any fun stories to share? Oh, okay. Any other questions? Okay, awesome. Thank you guys all so much for coming. We really appreciate you guys enjoying our talks. And
Thank
If you guys are interested in learning more about physical security or doing more hands-on stuff or asking more questions, we will be in Sala B, all of Ekoparty doing bypass and things like that. Just look out for us with the green Physical Security Village shirts and the big wooden doors that we brought all the way from Canada. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.